welcome one and all to Chamber Live. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to our speakers, Rich Adams and Paul Bird. Thank you to Becky Moore also from the University for helping organise all this. Thank you to Enterprise Solutions for their sponsorship of our events via Zoom so that we can actually hold these events, which is much, much appreciated. Thank you all for joining us. If you are minded to do social media, hopefully it's positive and congratulatory about what a fantastic event it is, then please do it using the hashtag ChamberLive. If you didn't like it, please don't tweet that. Just tell us and we'll make sure we do better next time. On which subject, in all seriousness, if there are subjects you want us to cover at the moment, if there are speakers you want us to get, if there are things in business you think, oh, it'd be really helpful if we had a session on that, please let us know, because as I promised at the very start of a lockdown, that our events would be always topical, added value. We wouldn't just have an event for the sake of having an event. We want to have things that were useful to you. So please let us know if there's things you think, oh, I wish we'd had an event on ABC because I need to know about that. And in fact, I've had one just come in, Helen, which I'll forward to you, which is about people saying they're using video content much more, and some basic tips about editing and publishing video would be useful. So that might be something we'll look into. From my point of view, before we start the event, I'll just give a few ground rules. So I will rather rudely do the mute all button, but allow you to unmute yourselves. If you want to raise a question, then raise your hand virtually in the participant function. If you can't do that, then you can send me a private chat. If you want to ask a question, you can do so via the chat as well. But if you're too embarrassed to ask or don't want to ask or whatever, you can ask it through me. Send me a private chat and I'll ask the question without naming names. Yeah, I think that's all the sort of technical aspects of the event. Just a couple of things to cover off from British Chambers of Commerce point of view about what we've been doing. We meet as the chief executives of all the chambers around the country on a Zoom call. There's 53 accredited county chambers, and we meet on a Zoom call every Monday, Wednesday and Friday, and we discuss policy, lobbying, what all the issues are at the moment. And the general feeling at the moment is that whilst the government's response to coronavirus with financial support to start with was swift, deep, and actually pretty much couldn't be faulted, we are since then becoming more and more disappointed that there seems to be a lot of confusion, not enough clarity about what's coming next, no sort of real roadmap. They have talked about when the initial support schemes such as furloughing come to an end, they will replace them with other schemes. It's not going to be a light switch going off, but I'm worried because business needs to know about that now to be able to plan. I think cash flow is going to be a real issue for businesses for the next medium term, actually. I think a lot of people have taken advantage of the support that's available and are actually okay, and that's good. There's confidence out there. A few of us were saying before we all came into this meeting that there's confidence. People are actually spending money. That's great. But I'm also worried that as people start to repay business loans, as they bring staff out of furlough, as they incur costs to put in social distancing, then will there be difficulties of cash flow, and we will see business failures and sadly redundancies. So we are pushing government now to say, okay, what's next? What's the real tangible support? And it'll probably have to be in some way sector-based. So the general sort of support schemes that were suitable for all businesses, we think there'll have to be some sector-specific ones, such as for the hospitality leisure industries, because they are so badly affected by this and they're going to find it so difficult. So that would be really, really important that we keep up that pressure and we don't just let government sort of say, right, well, that was the support, it's over, you're kind of on your own. I saw on the news just now that government is expected to reduce the distancing to 1 metre, and we accept that government is playing a very, very difficult balance game between pure health science and statistics and welfare and business and economic need and needing to get the country moving again. I would say, and this is purely a personal view, because British Chambers of Commerce are saying we will broadly welcome it as long as it is safe and as long as the guidelines are properly introduced. But I think is a little bit of the case that apparently statistically, the motorways would be almost no more dangerous if they upped the speed limit to 80 miles an hour if everyone stuck to it. But the problem is you put the speed limit up to 80 and everyone will do 90 because it's 70 now and everyone does 80. So my fear with going down to 1 meter is it makes it almost undoable. So as a responsible business, I would say, even if they say 1 meter, if you are able to stick with greater social distancing, then I think it's incumbent upon all of us to do that. We need to still continue to protect the NHS, protect our staff, protect our customers. And the 1 meter should be where you absolutely cannot do it, is my personal view. And finally, we were just saying, Rich was mentioning as we started the chat before you all joined us, that there's a lot of money coming out of London at the moment. I think a lot of people realizing that they don't need to be in the big bad city. They don't need to be in the capital. They don't need to sit in a crowded, smelly tube train for hours every day. And I think this is a real opportunity for the Southwest. I think we can show that the Southwest is a fantastic place to do business. Land, property, commercial property is cost effective. There are good skilled people down here, and there will be sadly a few people available to work. You know, the jobs market will become less tight. There'll be more talent out there, and I think that's something we can take advantage of. And on the back of that, we have increased our lobbying and our call for greater digital connectivity. So there is an argument that almost the physical infrastructure of transport connectivity is almost now second to saying we need the digital infrastructure. And in fact, next week we've got Paul Coles. Is it next week, Helen? Just getting her to nod sagely now. Paul Coles from BT, thank you. I was just making sure I wasn't selling you a dummy. Paul Coles from BT talking about the rollout of superfast broadband and 5G. And I think that'll be a really interesting session about what it means for the economy in the Southwest. So I hope you'll all join us. Anyway, I have spoken long enough now. I will hand over shortly to the speakers to discuss is going back to normal a missed opportunity to move forward. I don't think any of us need any sort of reminding that we've all had to change the way we do business, and what is back to normal, and do we want to go there? So without further ado, I will hand over to Rich Adams, whose title always escapes me, so I'm looking down, Business Engagement Manager, Research and Innovation at the University of Plymouth, and ask him to give his view on whether going back to normal is a missed opportunity to move forward. Thank you, Rich.
Stuart, thank you. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to come back and do another one of these things for the Chamber. I'm thrilled to be here and surprised I've been asked back as well. I'll try and challenge some of our assumptions as we go through the next 10 minutes or so, and then I'll hand over to Paul. Before I start to talk about any of the opportunities that I think we could be missing, I do have to caveat that with the knowledge that there are people out there that are struggling through this. Lockdown hasn't been great for some. Some businesses are really struggling. And of course, some people will lose their jobs as a result of this. So everything I'm about to say is under that caveat of recognizing there are people who are going through some painful and difficult times out there. But the title of this is Going Back to Normal, a Missed Opportunity to Move Forward. And the simple answer is yes, it would be a massive missed opportunity, because 3 months of learning in any environment, however difficult, is still an opportunity to learn. And when I hear how can we get back to normal, that narrative does worry me. It worries me because I think the world is moving forward at a rapid pace, and I'll touch on that as I go through the next 10 minutes or so. And I think it's a missed opportunity to implement practically some of the things that we have learned. And some of the things that we've learned is around understanding the shift in mindset that's happened as a result of the lockdown. The fact that there is so much more creativity now, so much more spontaneity of thought, so much more innovation and workforce empowerment. I'm going to talk about workforce empowerment at the fag end of this presentation in terms of enterprise being the new entrepreneurship. So I will come back to that workforce empowerment piece. But when I did one of these for the Chamber a few weeks ago, we touched on some of the resilience and adaptability, the lessons learned from the 3 months of lockdown or so. The fact that we can now trust our members of staff to work remotely, the fact that businesses are incredibly adaptable and can diversify, they are agile. We've seen this balance now between work life and family because we've stepped into people's homes virtually via Team and Zoom. We've seen that people actually are real people, not just Alan from accounts. The fact that they have children that pop up side by side of the laptop because tuition is happening from home, the dog needs to go out, there's washing in the background. These are real lives, real people. And I think that what that's done is helped us to develop our softer leadership skills and embrace technology. But more importantly, it's also giving us time to think and problem solve. And it's that time that we've taken off the dance floor and gone off to the balcony just to see how it's all playing out down below, as that's what's given us that chance to do that spontaneity of thought, that innovation, and that I've talked about. But what are some of the key takeaways? Because if we don't employ the lessons, they'll just be a wasted opportunity. It'd be 3 months of suffering without any positives coming for it at all. And I think some of the lessons are that to survive, our businesses have to become truly agile. And agile, not in that academic sense, he says, working for a university, but in the practical sense, the real rolling the sleeves up, that ability to adjust or even change the business models with extreme rapidity. And to do this, it's got to become clear that digitalization is critical. It's absolutely critical, helping organisations to adapt to the very speed. And without doubt is a primary driver of the resilience that's gone forward. Without the technology that we've implemented in our work lives in the last 3 months, the nation's GDP would be even further behind than the 20% that it's quoted at the moment. I think the other thing that's a real lesson that we must practicalise now is that businesses have to be ready. These kind of things are going to continue to come. Do you know what? There's always going to be challenges. We're always going to face challenges. But now, I think more than ever, businesses have to start implementing some continuity plans, practical solutions of what happens. And if you don't know your continuity plan will work, it probably won't. A crisis, as we've seen, is an incredibly stressful time. And the last thing you need is a response that has to be changed in mid-crisis. So one of the takeaways today is be ready, folks. Get that business continuity planning and implementation ready. The other takeaway is lean supply chains. That long, complex supply chains increase your vulnerability. We all have them, we all have to have them, but disasters that impact any part of that chain impact every link, and those interdependencies need to be thoroughly understood and planned for. So have a good review of your supply chains, key piece of learning from the last 3 months. I've talked about digital, get digital. The current crisis has just shown a big role digitalization has in everything, and it implies enabling agility and quick response to the unexpected. Incidentally, digital is not just the technology bit, it's the people bit as well. I mean, Stuart's already in his introduction talked about extending the bandwidth to 5G. Have we got people who have got good home broadband? If you're expecting people to work from home, they've got to be able to have the tools to do the job. Are our people effectively trained? And it also requires different management techniques as well, because actually coaching someone going through a difficult time at home as a manager requires different skills than when you can see whites of the eyes and you're in the office and you've got HR there and you can do big wraparound support schemes. These are different skills. Digital has a huge part to play. Incidentally, also, manual and on-premises solutions, they just don't cut it anymore, especially in the Southwest where we've got so many SMEs. Actually, we've got predominantly S's. But even global organizations today that still rely on ad hoc manual processes to get the job done, it's not going to work. Relying on error-prone kind of manual administration only guarantees that sooner or later that process will break. So how do we make sure that the benefits that we've learned aren't got lost when we go forward? Well, the answer is that we have to continue to innovate. And big picture stuff is that the government recognises that the foot should not be taken off the gas in terms of innovation. The government's still looking to spend, in terms of R&D, that's how they define innovation, R&D, to be about 2.4% of GDP by 2027. We're about 1.7% at the minute, just climbing up to about 1.8. if we get to the 2.4%, and it's important because it places the UK on the forefoot of that global economy. If we do get to the 2.4%, it puts the UK amongst the top quarter of OECD nations. Incidentally, that's ahead of the US, Japan, France, and China in terms of our R&D expenditure. But that will require about £4 billion of additional investment just at a time when some businesses are looking to rein in expenditure. And this is where I have some quarrel with the government on this, is that I don't see innovation as around spending money. The lessons learned that I've just listed aren't around spending money. Invention is spending money to create knowledge. Innovation is spending knowledge to make the money. So we must capture the knowledge that we've gained over the last 3 months and commercialize that to get a return. And we've got to get a return because the pace of change is just getting even quicker. And those that are looking at the recent past are already being left behind. And I'm seeing businesses fall into one of 4 categories at the moment. There are businesses that are rapidly trying to build the sandcastle as that tide has already come in. They're in that consolidation mode. Those businesses are really going to struggle because the world is rapidly accelerating away from them in commercial terms. So there's the consolidation piece. The other businesses I'm seeing are those where there's blurred lines. They understand the world is changing, but they don't quite understand what to do and how to respond to it. There's those that are disruptors rather than disrupted. These are the ones that are outpacing the dodo at the moment in a massive way. The disruptors are the ones that have really responded particularly well, and you've seen them in the headlines across the newspaper and on the media during the last 3 months. So the consolidation, the blurred line, the disruptors, and the final one is the globalizations. These are the ones that have recognized that the world is actually a pretty small place. And most of the businesses across the commercial globe have been sent back to go. They've been sent back to start. And they've now gotten their heads up in a pretty bad place looking to trade on a global stage. And C19 has shown how interconnected we all are on a global stage. You know, the businesses that I'm interested in, that Chamber are interested in, are all of those, but particularly the blurred line businesses, because these are the businesses that have the potential, the growth potential, but just need that additional amount of probably public sector business support to get them going again into that knowledge intensive type solutioneering. So I talked at the front end, and I'm coming to a conclusion now, Stuart, that that enterprise is the new entrepreneurialism. And this is another takeaway from the last 3 months, is that when we've talked about entrepreneurialism in the past, we always tend to think about the person who's founded the business, the person who starts the business, the person who owns the business. And actually what we've seen when the backs are against the wall is that it's enterprise and entrepreneurialism that's important. And enterprise is that solutioneering that rests within every one of your employees, because they haven't flicked a switch in their brain at 5 p.m. and stopped thinking about work. These are the people that are still on a cup of tea on a Sunday afternoon, thinking about how they can continue making that business a success, to drive innovation, to drive creative solutions into that organization for a really productive future. And I'm going to conclude now that a lot of the knowledge, a lot of the learning that we've got over the last 3 months is experiential. And the connectivity that we now need as a business community is more than ever. And the role for the Chamber is stronger than ever, because you can get some solutions via a Google search, but the experiential piece, the piece that keeps you awake at 2 in the morning, that experiential piece has been addressed by another business, I guarantee it. And that other businesses incidentally may have tried 1 or 2 solutions and failed before they got to the right solution that you need as well. And this is what the Chamber does. It connects people in a much more qualitative and subjective way. And the role of the Chamber is vital now to make sure that we benefit from all this experiential learning, so we don't start looking to go back, but we start to apply that learning to go forward. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you, Rich. That was really, really fascinating. I've written down a couple of things there, and you'll see that from in the chat I've said I'd be interested to hear how you're all adapting, overcoming, innovating. So if any of you would be willing to share any ideas, best practice, things you've done, then please put your hand up or write it in the chat, and we'll come back to you on that after Paul's spoken, because I really do think it's useful for us all to talk to each other about what we've done and how we've adapted. And you know, you've seen that from the Chamber point of view. here I am, 3-4 months ago, I'd never even heard of Zoom. And here we are holding events over the internet, virtual events, live events, and going forward, we'll take the best practice out of that. We were saying that, I don't want to move away from having face-to-face events because there's still that value. But for example, City Conversations that many of you will come to is a fantastic event. It's our flagship event. But why shouldn't we also, as well as meeting in person, be web streaming it? Why shouldn't we have people asking questions virtually? And I think, these are things that we will take out of it. But anyway, enough of that. Paul, who I hope I haven't stolen any of your thunder because you're about to talk about digital. So I will now hand over to Paul Bird, who's says the creative visionary, pioneer and avid surfer at Elixl. So Paul, over to you.
Thanks, Stuart. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all keeping well and safe. So as Stuart mentioned, I'm Paul Bird. I'm one of the creative directors at Elixl. We also helped co-found a community called Digital Plymouth, which you can see the banner behind me. But the real reason for this banner is just to hide all the mess in the bedroom. So that's why I've got it there. So today I'm just going to tell you a quick story about being brave and moving forward. So I'm going to start off with a business in these current times, or it could be any business, could be your own business, could even be other businesses as well, and further afield. So these are challenging times in the year 2020. They want to know how to move forward from COVID-19. How are they going to adapt their business? People keep talking about innovation, enterprise, changing, but they're probably thinking, what does this look like? And how do they go about it? Are these just buzzwords that I keep hearing on the radio and on the newspapers or wherever? And they also keep thinking about their future prospects. How are they going to get more work from their customers? How are they going to empower their staff and adopt an innovation culture of collaboration? And so let me tell you about what we've seen on the digital community and the Elixl side of things, where we've seen the rise of tech startups, entrepreneurs, business leaders, people within large organizations who want change to happen. These people are approaching us and the community for all kinds of solutions. So like whether it needs an app, a website, or a system that will solve real problems. But these are the same people who didn't have time previously, but they're now wanting to try something new with the time and opportunity that they have. So whether they're being furloughed or they've just got really slow business and they've got that extra time to think. And I like the analogy Rich just gave about getting off the dance floor and onto the balcony, because it resonates as to what I'm about to tell you, because it's all about, okay, how do you get onto the balcony and start to take that overarching view? So this is it. So businesses need to start thinking like a startup again. They need to be brave, explore, and empower the team around you in a way that breeds success, even though failure is just around the corner. But how do you go about doing this? The business asks. It's simple, kinda. Start by empathizing with your customer or end user. Really get into their shoes or flip-flops, because we're now in the summer, and understand their pain points. From this, you can start to come up with new, exciting ideas that you can test, prototype, develop, and start solving real problems to address these customers' needs. So, as a hypothetical example, if we were to look at the future of pharmacy, so I've learned recently that they legally have to sell from a building. So they have to have someone within a building selling the medicine. But people need medicine. They're coming in the shop sick. They're touching all the items on the shelves. So all the products on the shelves are becoming contaminated. This didn't used to be such a fatal problem pre-COVID. But as a result, the poor person behind that counter, or even the people who worked in the shop, would have to clean all the items on the shelf every time someone came in to touch an item. And so how can you keep all the items sanitized on the shelves? Well, one possible idea that could address this need: remove the shelves entirely, remove the items, and install iPads. So think like Argos, where you view all the items on the iPad, or you search for the item you want. It can give you additional information, and then someone brings the item to you in a safe way. So this is one idea. However, you need to get back into your customer's shoes again, and think about how introducing technology like iPads may affect them or enhance their experience. And this is why we collaborate. We bring everyone into a room, a virtual room like we are now, to try and get different perspectives and experiences. And this is where innovation starts to happen. So this business that we're telling this story about, I mean, this business has crashes, as I'm sure everyone on this call does. So how do I get into my customer's shoes, or flip-flops, or start thinking like a startup? I mean, some businesses may have been going for over 50 years, in which case you're probably thinking, well, how can I go back to that mindset? And so there are a few simple exercises that I'd recommend to start with. And some of you may have come across them already. But if you have, fantastic. I would just say, keep going at it. So one of them, the first exercise, is the value proposition canvas. And this is done by a company called Strategyzer, and they sell lots of books, and they're all fantastic. It's definitely worth a Google. And what this value proposition canvas allows you to do, it's a tool to help you design, test, and visualize the value of your product or service. And the great thing about it is that it can take 20 minutes based on just focusing on a single customer, or it can take you 3 hours. It all depends on how you want to work with it. It's very flexible. And as an example, we use this technique in our workshops with our customers to help challenge new ideas that will meet users' needs. And it's a great way on how we've adapted to work with our customers to help build trust, uncovering new tech ideas, and just getting everyone to collaborate with each other. Because you actually find that when you get more people into a room, you get to see all the various perspectives. And speaking of collaboration, it's dangerous to go alone. With everyone working remotely, how do we make people feel involved and not excluded from the discussions? When we're running a project, so either at Elixir or Digital Plymouth, I mean, we have also seen other businesses in our industry do the same, where they run daily Scrum meetings. So just 10-minute updates just to see how everyone's getting on, even the people who are furloughed, just to make them feel more involved, more empowered in the team. And we also use tools such as Miro, which is spelled M-I-R-O, as a way of hosting our value proposition and design thinking workshops. And the great thing about Miro, it'll change your world. Businesses like IBM use this as a tool for collaborating across all their businesses. And it's a way in which you can get everyone to work on the same artboard. You can throw ideas around, you can design apps, you can design websites, very low-fi, low fidelity, not very quality, not much, how am I going with this? It's not very high quality, but it gives you enough sense as to where you can combine all your thoughts together. So yeah, Miro, fantastic tool, and it's very much our best friend in the industry where we work. So to summarize, because I'm coming towards the end, to move forward from COVID, now is the time to reassess what pain points your customers or users are having, and understand how you can relieve their pain points. And if you don't put your customers first, if you ignore the signs, don't listen to your customers' pain points and frustrations, you'll not be able to adapt quickly enough, and they'll go elsewhere. So thinking about the segments that Rich labelled earlier on about the sandcastles, the people who are unsure, the disruptors, all those big globalization businesses, which category do you want to be in? And so I want to conclude with this. I mean, there are, as Richard said, you know, there are businesses who are really struggling out there, and we have to do what we can to bring together and to club together to see how we can all help each other out. But what people need to realize is that this is also an exciting time for new opportunities and for something better to come out of what's happened. This isn't going to be easy for all of us, but we are in the same storm together. We're not in the same boat because some people are in bigger boats than others. And so I challenge everyone to be brave, collaborate, and raise their game with everything that's happening. So there we go. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Paul. Being brave is very, very interesting. Something that I'm very keen to be, and I know Helen is, and we were talking about that earlier, weren't we, Helen, about now is not the time, I personally believe, to retreat and to curl up like a hedgehog with your spines out and just sit there and hope that the wave washes over you, because I think you're going to drown. I think now is the time to be bold and brave and to look at things in a new way. And the biggest thing I took from your talk there personally, Paul, was about looking at it as a new startup. I think that's a really good idea. So if I sat here now and said, well, if I was going to start a chamber, what would you guys want? What do you really need? I think that's a really clever thought. And I also took from Richard's presentation about enterprises solution. Did you call it solutioneering, solution engineering? And I really like that thought about getting your employees to work, because often it's the ones that have got the ideas. They're the ones at the sharp end. And in fact, I've just had a private message with Steve Statham from St Luke's Hospice, who's happy to share his experience of virtual consultation. So there's a caring business that prides itself on its personal touch. How do you work around that in these really difficult times? So Steve, how did it come around with your virtual consultations? Who led that, and what did you learn?
Yeah, thanks, Stuart. It's as you say, from an organisation that's really about personal touch and personal care, it's been one of the biggest transformations we've seen within St Luke's ever since I've been here anyway. And the fact that we, you know, with the social distancing, we couldn't go out and physically see patients. We had to do something completely different. And bearing in mind our nurses, you know, they're not the most IT savvy. So we had a situation where some couldn't even turn the iPad on, let alone go out there and do consultations. So we had a big learning of supplying devices for all our community nurses, so they could have these virtual consultations with patients. And initially it was very clunky, you know, it's very different for them to work, but they've certainly got used to it now. And I think it's also helped in terms of efficiency as well, you know, where, you know, going out to visit patients in these far remote areas, you know, it can take an hour's travel to get there and an hour's travel back. So using the virtual reality has been a real gift in those situations, but also being able to link back to specialists. So if you've got a nurse who's in the home with a patient, who's seen a patient, and they need that consultant input at that particular time, they can do it there and then on the spot. And that's been incredible to do that as well. So yeah, I think from the virtual, from the sort of the virtual consultations have worked extremely well for us. I think we've been developing it further in terms of the inpatient unit. Again, we've restricted visitors into the inpatient unit, and that's been very difficult to see their loved ones. So supplying even our patients with iPads so they can FaceTime their loved ones has been, again, an incredible experience for our patients and also visitors there as well. And also, I think, you know, we've been using virtual reality as well. You know, you remember, Stuart, at the time when we did the Great Barrier Reef through virtual reality. You know, we had one this week where a person wanted to walk the Great Wall of China, and we did it through virtual reality, bringing the equipment in and giving that experience. So it's really changed the way we engage with our patients, and I think it will be completely different as we go forward. how we use virtual reality, I think we'll keep on with that. We'll never get away from that personal touch, the care that we're all about. But I think it will enhance in terms of the service we can give to our patients and families.
Thank you, Steve. That is fascinating, and you're absolutely right. I mean, and isn't it great that some of this technology-driven stuff is stuff we should have been doing to be more efficient? I've never understood why I have to go and see my doctor, why I can't have a quick chat. I mean, it's just madness, unless you've got some embarrassing rash you need to show them. Sometimes a quick chat is all it takes, isn't it? I think so. That seems to be much more efficient. And the virtual reality thing, you're absolutely right. My late mum desperately wanted to go to see the Northern Lights, but her condition meant we couldn't get her there. But we did get a virtual reality headset, and she was able to see the Northern Lights before she died, which was wonderful. So we've got to capture these innovations. We've got to capture these things that we've learned and use the best bits of it. Not losing our whole business, not throwing baby out with the bathwater, but just capturing those good bits. So I see Tony Cobley's come in the chat. I'm aware there's another chat going on about second waves, which I'll come to in a minute. But Tony, you've mentioned you've taken on new types of work through collaborating. Would you mind just telling us what you've done and how you've innovated and changed?
Yeah, sure. As I said in the message there, I think my business has evolved over this period. So certain projects that I've not taken on in the past, because it's not my personal field of photography, I've managed to collaborate with other specialists to be able to kind of bring that under my banner and manage it. So if a client needs we did a tourism shoot actually recently where a client needed the normal stuff I do, the stills photography from the ground, but they also needed some drone photography, and they also needed some video, and they also needed some 360 tours. And through collaborators, sort of partners that I'm working with, we were able to sort of bring that all under one banner and coordinate it for them and kind of edit it consistently. But it's kind of encouraged me to evolve it that way, really. And it's kind of a why didn't I do that before moment.
There's a lot of us doing that. And if there's anyone else wants to come in with any examples of what they've done they think is useful or interesting, please.
Can I pick up on the why didn't we do that before moment? Is that all right?
Yeah, please do.
I mean, I noticed this week that the BBC now take the temperature of all members of staff who enter their buildings. They also take temperature of people who leave the building, but that's the side I don't quite understand that. But it made me think, not that we need to start taking the temperature of all our members of staff, but it did make me think, have we managed to at last stepped over this issue of if you are ill in Britain, you take on very much the British mantle that I'll carry on, I'll battle on. I'll go into, now we've got COVID-19, but we've had colds that go through a workforce and productivity drop. Influenza goes through the workforce, sickness bugs, everything, and yet we still carry on, we go to work because we think culturally that's been the right thing to do. And yet it's hit the productivity of our office space, our shop floor, our manufacturing, whatever it might be. So I'm just wondering now, have we actually got to that stage that we've learned from COVID-19 that it is okay to be ill? You might still be able to work from home, but it is okay just to not turn up. In fact, it's a taboo now if you turn up to the workforce and you're not well. I'm just wondering if that's sort of another thing, that we don't go back to normal by taking our germs into the workplace, and that we learn from these 3 months or so.
Absolutely. Helen, I think that you've got something that kind of leads on from that. Would you mind asking your question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, Rich and Paul, if you think that, we've had a lot of the ability and technology that's been available for quite a long time now, but actually businesses have been very reluctant to enter that change phase because of all the associated human resistance to change, and it's a huge project, isn't it, making any changes within an organisation. Do you think we're now in the right place to accelerate some of those changes that have been on the back burner for a while?
Paul, do you want to go first?
Yeah, happy to. Yeah, well, it all comes back again to mindset, and what COVID-19 has kind of done is forced people into that position where before they thought, oh no, this is impossible. How can we get all of our workforce to work remotely? But but people have tried it and they've actually found, oh, it does work. Oh, hold on, I can trust my employees to still get the same level of work done and achieve what we need as a business, and everyone's really happier. So I think in what's happened, it has kind of forced people into situations, and I think it's also going to make people think differently moving forward as well. So there was mention a moment ago about people using iPads and devices and things like that. Now, before, when it was they won't need training on computers or anything like that, or now it is very much how flexible and more collaborative would our force be if people do either seek that training or if they train themselves in the things that, so whether that's how to use an iPad or a mobile phone, or whether that's using some of the tools that you find. I do think that it's been a steer in the right direction, and it's given people a leg up as to seeing what is possible, and also learning from others as well has been a real a privilege for people to see, because you can say, oh, right, but if that business is doing it, why can't we? And so everyone kind of is stepping up their game, so to speak.
I think absolutely it's an opportunity to accelerate change. And I think people are much more adaptable than we give them credit for in many circumstances. But in other circumstances, people will have very little choice, because one of the real indicators that's come from this is that business owners will be looking at their bottom line and thinking, actually, can I afford this office to run this business when I've just managed to do 3 months of operating without people being in this office? So, I think the bottom line will start to drive some of this activity anyway. And I'm not going to name names, but I know an individual that went to, they got called in by their local authority. They work for actually a county council, and they went in and they were advised, clear your desk. From here on in, this is the new mode of operating. You work from home. And there were commercial premises, and those desks would then be rented out on a commercial rate to the rest of the commercial market to generate income for this council. So, I think in some circumstances it will be out of the employee's hand, but that pace of change that I've talked about is happening. You either sort of adapt to it, or the dodo will catch you up.
Absolutely. And I think Tim York-Dunn's made a really good point on the chat there, saying companies should ask, why didn't we do that before? They should identify loss-making and resource-hungry activities and stop doing them. I mean, absolutely. You do start wondering, so why do we do that then? A little thing, it's a lovely thing to have, but we've got a conference room at the chamber that's probably used for about 5 hours a week. Well, it probably should actually be an office for someone. So we'll look to rent that out. If anyone wants a very nice office from about 600 square feet, inquire below. So that will be something we've got to think about. We've got to think about, do we really need to meet as often as we do? As chief executives of the chambers, we meet regularly. We used to haul ourselves up to London. Well, we don't need to do that. We're meeting 3 times a week on Zoom. And that comes to a point that Ivor's said in the chat there, Ivor Humphrey, about thinking about the sustainability of it as well, about, do we really need to operate in ways that are not sustainable and environmentally friendly, which I don't think we do. And so what will the new normal be? And I suppose that's a question to pose to you both now. So Rich and Paul, so start with you, Rich. What is the new normal?
I don't think anyone knows, and there isn't any such a thing, because I keep saying it, the pace of change, and it exponentially is getting quicker and quicker. So there is, you don't get comfortable in any particular paradigm, because it's going to change. And I noticed on some of the comments earlier, there was a question around wave 2 hitting, and the UK economy versus Germany's economy. And all I can say is, if you're not doing that business continuity planning now, for all circumstances, from a lack of fuel to your workforce not being well, to all sorts of things, foot and mouth crisis, we've seen them all. Get those continuity plans in place and test them and test them and test them, because there is always going to be challenges ahead. It's just that those challenges are becoming at an exponentially quicker rate. Almost, it used to be decade by decade, then year by year. It's almost quarter by quarter. We lurch. We always go. This time last year, it seemed a simpler time. Heaven knows what we'll be thinking this time next year. But yeah, I don't think there is going to be a new normal, Stuart.
No.
I think it will be. Don't settle.
No, you're right. I think accept that change is the new normal, that things will change, and you've just got to adapt and overcome and keep changing with them. There's very few businesses manage to deliver the same thing in the same way for years on end and not adapt to change. And you can either be at the front end of that, or as you say, the dodo in waiting at the back end of that.
Yeah.
Paul, did you have a view on that about the new normal?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with both of you. There isn't really a new normal because everybody's mindset has changed. Everybody has evolved, whether they've liked it or not. Whether they've been cooped up at home or whether they've had to, try and do business else in any other means. So everyone has adapted, whether they've liked it or not, to the situation worldwide. And so I think it's all about empathizing with people and really understanding. Okay, let's listen to our staff. Let's listen to our business leaders. Let's listen to our customers, and just really understand. Okay, where is their mindset at? And you'll start to learn that. Oh, actually, it turns out this person has this particular frustration. Oh well, we can sort that out. So, for example, if someone is working for you and they've got kids at home and they're struggling to balance work with their personal responsibilities, sometimes it's easier just to say, right, okay, look, we're going to be flexible here. What hours can you put in to make sure that we're covering what's needed? Let's forget about the 9 to 5. 9 to 5 doesn't need to be in this equation. It's a case of, can you get the job done, and what are you comfortable with? And so that's how we need to move forward. We all need to be a lot more flexible and a lot more agile, as Rich said earlier on.
And balance that, of course, with the welfare of the staff. So staff who must know that they don't have to be on 24/7. So the Director General of BTC, in his auto signature, it says, I'm sending this email at this time because it suits me. That doesn't mean I expect a reply at this time, because he send it at 2 a.m. And I like that. It's accepting that this is me. I don't need you to respond immediately. But there could be a danger of having people not have a safe space to come to. So we've got the physical health safe space of if someone's shielding, or if they're vulnerable, or if they're ill. Yes, they need to be able to work from home. But the converse is they need a safe space to come to work. A lot of people are finding working from home really, really difficult. And I think someone has put that in the
Luke's put that. So it's a really good point. And again, if there is a business out there that designs internal office space, I just feel that the office space is going to change. That communal area piece will go. The use of materials that can be deep cleaned and wiped down needs to be come into play. So I think I absolutely agree with Luke. Provision for those that don't have that home environment, but that office space has to be healthy and safe as well. And I think a lot of office spaces are going to go through rapid redesign very quickly.
Yes, I think you're right. And it's ironic, isn't it, that everyone was moving rapidly towards open plan, and now they probably would prefer to not have open plan. Hot desking was a thing that was all very exciting, and innovation hubs where we all work together. But I don't want to lose that completely. I personally would miss the community. I think there's an issue in our society that communities don't exist like they used to. Everyone used to go to the same butcher that was the local butcher, the same baker, the same church, the same pub, because it was your local one. And so you knew everyone through those circles. People don't know their next door neighbours now. They don't know who they are. They don't know their name. So we have different communities. We've got a lot of communities online. That's okay, but it's not great for mental health. It's not good for our well-being. It's not good for always creativity and that lovely collaboration piece. So I hope we don't lose that completely, that ability to collaborate in a creative way. Do you think, Rich? I mean, you do a lot of sort of collaborative work, and Paul.
Yeah, I mean that is the challenge. I mean, it is incredibly difficult to replicate if you're doing, in our world, it's called service architecture. If you're designing a new service, you need the right brains in the room with the flip chart, in the right, setting the right tone. It is incredibly difficult to replicate that online. It's not impossible, but it's incredibly difficult. But large organisations do this all around the world now. So my previous background was writing £1 billion type bids, but I would do it with a team of maybe 100 via satellite links all around the world. It is doable, but it does require a acclimatization to that type of working, and many of us are not in that space at the moment.
Yeah. So just as a sort of straw poll, perhaps we can do it by thumbs up, thumbs down, and I'll scan. There's a reaction button where you can put your thumb up or not. So if, for example, I'll just say, and please don't say I'm going to do this, but if the chamber said, do you know what, we're not going to have a premises. We don't need a premises. You don't need to come to our offices. We're not going to have a conference room. We're going to do everything out in the community or virtually. Would that be a good thing or a bad thing? So I suppose the question is, would the chamber be as effective for you without an office? So if you think it would, put your thumb up now. So if you think the chamber would be as effective without an office, put your thumb up. Well, I would say I've got greater than 50% put their thumbs up then. So that's very interesting, because there's a feeling like you kind of, a chamber is a hub, it's a center, and there's that feeling of having a place, isn't it? A place to come to, a place to go. It's got a tangible body, if you like, and that's interesting. Don't immediately think that we're going to change that. Some services the chamber offer, for example, international trade, there are some certificates have to be what they call wet signed, so they have to have a place to go. But it is interesting to think about it. And also, I'm aware of the time, but I just want to say, so the other thing is, I've heard people saying offices are going to change. I'm sure they are. I've heard a lot of people saying, oh, offices won't be required anymore and everyone's going to downsize. They might. Certain businesses might downsize, but if you're also distancing, they might not. You might have half the staff, but need twice the space. So it is interesting to see how these things are going to pan out. So having asked the question at the start, is going back to normal a missed opportunity to move forward? I don't want to answer for everyone on the call, but I mean, is there a single person who thinks going back to normal isn't a missed opportunity? Is there a single person who's going to be brave enough to say, no, I haven't learned anything, I haven't done anything differently, I just want to go back to how it was a few months ago? No, I'm not seeing a reaction. Mind you, I think it'd be brave to say that after everything we've just talked about. But I think we're going to learn from the good bits. We're going to keep innovating. We're going to keep sharing best practice. I hope you will do that through us, through our, as a chamber, we're stronger together. We can do things together and better. In fact, we had a call, didn't we, Becky Moore there? When we were on the call the other day, we were talking about how innovation isn't necessarily doing something new, it's about doing something new to your business. So it was Henry Ford. Everyone says he invented the production line, but he didn't. He invented the production line for motor vehicles. Rather brutally, the production line he observed it in was a slaughterhouse, and saw how efficient it was to keep the animals moving, not the people. Awful place to learn it from, but we can all learn from each other about the things we do. So please continue to share your examples and your ideas, share best practice. We'll put them in our magazine, in Profile Magazine. We'll share them online. We'll hold more events about sharing best practice, about innovation. I found these things really, really fascinating to think about and talk about. I've picked up a couple of real nuggets there. I'm going to sit and think about, if the chamber was a startup, what would I do? And I want to think about saying to the whole team, right, you solution engineer it. You tell me what we can do better and slicker and better for the customer. And you, as customers, you tell us what you want from us. You tell us what the pain points are. Hopefully there aren't too many pain points of dealing with the chamber, but if there are, we need to know about it. Paul, you just putting your hand up there, so come in there.
Yeah, I was just thinking that we did an exercise at the last Digital Plymouth event called the Reciprocity Circle, which is something we could actually open out to the Chamber as well. And again, we use the tool Miro, which I mentioned earlier, but it's a way for everyone to basically go onto an artboard where there's lots of post-its, digital post-its, and on one side, you write on your post-it something that you can offer someone. So whether it's a service you provide or whether it's a hobby that you've got, so you can, I don't know, teach someone how to knit. And then on the other post-it, you write down what it is you're after. And so the idea is that members can then look at these post-its and get in contact with those people to see how they can help each other out. So that's called the Reciprocity Circle, so receive and give.
Well, that is fascinating. I think, so we had a really good take-up in the first time Rich spoke. The second time now we've had an even bigger take-up of people registering for this event. And so there will be more of this sort of thing coming on. I'm going to have to wrap up because of the time, and not least because I'm supposed to be chairing another meeting in about 30 seconds time. But Helen made a point to me privately in the chat there about the point that a couple of you mentioned a second wave. I think some of that was answered in the questions. I think the other thing, and forgive me, but it was not the prime topic of this, so we haven't got time to answer it now. But I think what I would sort of throw it out there is, what can we all do as businesses to do to protect the nation from that second wave? What can we do to test our own business resilience plans? What can we do to make sure that we survive and thrive? And the Chamber is here to help you through all that. So I don't think we've got time to do anything else. I'm so sorry. Please join us for further Chamber Live events. We've got next week, as say, Paul Coles from BT talking about infrastructure, 5G, superfast broadband and so forth. We've got some fantastic events coming up. And I look forward to seeing you all then. I'm going to very briefly unmute and perhaps everyone, and perhaps you'd all thank our speakers, Rich Adams and Paul Bird.